Tokyo braces for a historic reckoning as President Donald Trump plans for a high-stakes three-day visit, his first since returning to the White House. With 18,000 security forces deployed, meetings set with Emperor Naruhito and Prime Minister Sanai Takahashiti, and the potential stop in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The trip blends alliance building, atomic memory and hard-nosed trade talks, as Trump spares Japan tariffs but eyes leverage ahead of his Xi summit. The world watches. Will this be diplomacy, theater, or a strategic pivot in America's Asia playbook? Let's get in focus. The Guardian has reported that Japan's new Prime Minister, Tsunai Takaichi, faces a crucial test with President Donald Trump on trade and security. This high-stakes meeting is vital to stabilize Tokyo's relationship with its unpredictable American ally and secure high-minority government. Takaichi must deploy the Abe effect, leveraging her mentor's bond with Trump. Core issues remain pressure for Japan's military build-up to reach 2% of GDP and navigating Trump's aggressive America's first trade stance. The talks define the strategic partnership, especially on shared concerns over China. While seeking further trade relief, Takaichi's true success lies in converting a personal bond into a stable, concrete, and lasting political and security alliance. According to the Japan Times, President Trump's visit is a high-stakes debut for Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi. The lavish Tokyo summit focuses on two critical pillars: securing favorable trade terms and enforcing a massive increase in Japanese defense spending. Takaichi must deploy the Abe effect, leveraging her mentor's personal bond with Trump to stabilize her fragile government. She promised to raise defense spending to 2% of GDP early, yet Trump pressures for a far more aggressive 5% target. The bilateral alliance is now conditioned by the $550 billion investment deal and ongoing trade friction. Takaichi's success is measured by balancing American economic demands against her needs for stability before Trump meets with China's leader. And to provide more analysis, joining us from Paris is Mr. Mehel Nicolas Ferzilli, Director of EU ASEAN Center. A very warm welcome, Mr. Ferzilli. It's always a pleasure to have you with us in our programs. Can Takaichi truly revive the Abe effect to manage Trump's transactional diplomacy without sacrificing Japan's economic sovereignty, sir?
I'm delighted to join you today. I think the media, the American media, the European media, they tend to exaggerate the importance of personal interaction in diplomatic issues, right? And maybe because he's an actor, he's a very theatrical player, and he comes from, reality TV and Broadway theater. Trump himself exaggerates what we call rapport, right? The rapport between the characters, right? So he's the hero of the play, and there are several second fiddles, and Sanai Takaichi is one of the second fiddles, second character or secondary character, and Trump and the media would exaggerate the importance of the individual personal connection they have. Just like, when he meets Macron, he will say, oh, Macron is my good friend. Or when he met, the Emir
Sir,
of
could
Qatar.
you please refer to personal individual and elaborate more about, because I don't really understand this?
So I'm saying it's not that important, not that important. But of course, when he met the Emir of Qatar, for example, 2 days ago on the tarmac of Doha Airport, when he was refueling his airplane, he made a theater about his personal rapport, right? His personal relationship with the Emir of Qatar. In reality, all that is not very relevant because Trump himself and American policymakers are cold neo-realists. So when you are a cold, calculating neo-realist, all that theatrics about friendship and interaction and the chemistry, the individual chemistry personally between the American president and the new Japanese prime minister, blah, 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 all that is irrelevant because, in that new era, America has become extremely materialistic, just like its main rival, which is China. So now we have the world being partitioned between gigantic spheres of influence, the American sphere of influence and the Chinese sphere of influence, and all the others are secondary or tertiary level players. They're not that important, right? So what I'm coming at is Japan, so far in the era of Trump economic nationalism, Japan has had a good deal. Everything is relative. Japan has had a good deal relative to the bad deals, the very bad deals, for example, the Europeans or the Swiss or the Indians or even, the Canadians, all these countries, traditional friends and allies of America, in the past 6-7 months, they were slapped with very aggressive tariffs and demands from the Trump White House. Relatively speaking, Japan was spared. So Japan has been treated quite well and quite nicely by the Trump White House, regardless of Sanae Takaishi.
Does Tokyo's $550 billion investment pledge reflect strategic alignment or strategic submission to Washington's America First agenda, sir?
So even here, very good point, but even here, regarding that point, the idea that not only America's traditional trading partner and allies were slapped with very high tariffs, on top of that, and perhaps more importantly, Trump forced their hand and got from them huge concessions. And the biggest concession from every trading partner, he got the promise of them investing trillions of dollars in the next 2, 3, 4 years, not building new factories and new plants at home in Japan and Europe, but instead forcing private sector companies from Europe, from England, from Japan, from all over the world to go to America and to build new factories in Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas. That is the biggest concession which Trump got. And here, that pill will not be difficult to swallow for the Japanese. For all the others, South Korean, German, French, UK, Swiss, Canada, that pill will be a very bitter pill and hard to swallow. For the Japanese, and to a lesser extent, the South Koreans, that pill will be easy to swallow. Why? Because they have been used to doing so early on. What I'm coming at, even before Trump came to power, with that new economic nationalist ethos, even then, the Japanese were used to building factories in America, to invest billions of dollars every month in America, etc. And the reason why the Japanese were used to it is very simple. 25, 30 years ago, when Japan was the most successful economy in the world, they were crushed by America. America in the late 80s, early 90s, really attacked aggressively the Japanese. And to be honest, the Japanese never really recovered since the early 90s, right?
Till today, sir, till 2025?
Yeah, so today, Japan is an important player in the world economy, but it's no longer a gigantic economic superpower.
The most two strongest economies now are America and China. Sir, as this is the first state visit for Donald Trump to Japan after he, of course, took the administration and became the president of the United States, is Donald Trump playing his business deal he went to Japan first and then he is making a deal with Japan that will reach the consensus that he will be happy about and Japan will be happy about, and then go back to China and play his game? Who is going to be the winner?
So clearly, they are allies and they are aligned, even though, the media...
Japan and the United States?
See, exactly. Japan and America are allies, and their interests are kind of aligned.
Sir, who is the ally of the United States?
So what I'm coming at is that really the Japanese are afraid of China. It doesn't mean that the fear of China is rational. So part of the Japanese, and the government of Japan today is a right-wing. It's a very right-wing government. And you could say, oh, it's a right-wing government. Who is their main enemy? Who is the one who killed tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers and humiliated the Japanese at the end of the Second World War and sent nuclear bombs onto Nagasaki and Hiroshima? It's not the Chinese. It's the Americans, right? But in spite of all that, if you talk to Japanese policymakers, especially right-wing policymakers, they believe that their enemy is China, rightly or wrongly, even though, and this is a paradox, Japanese companies do a lot of business with China. And by the way, Chinese consumers love Japanese brands. So the middle class and the upper middle class, tens of millions of consumers.
But at the same time, they're enemies.
Yeah, but in spite of all that, psychologically, the perception amongst right-wing Japanese nationalists like Sanae Takaishi herself is that the enemy is China, not America. And because of that psychological perception, they believe that they have a friend in the White House in Donald Trump. And he also believes that he has friends amongst the Japanese nationalist right, because he thinks that he, America first, an American nationalist, and the right-wing Japanese nationalist, he thinks that they have a lot in common. One of the things they have in common is the fear of China, the fear of Chinese expansion. And look at the map. We live in the age of geoeconomics. Look at the geographic map. If you have Japan solidly on your side, it's a good way to contain, to encircle, right? If you want to encircle China, which is the goal of Donald Trump, having Japan squarely on your side is very useful.
Sir, with defense spending fast-tracked to 2% of GDP, is Japan preparing for deterrence or drifting into a US-led arms race in Asia, sorry?
Here it's about symbols. It's about symbols because, after the Second World War, the idea of, Japan having a big standing army became taboo, became a big, big taboo. And because of that, there was an arrangement made with the Americans to keep defense spending low by design, on purpose. The world changed completely. And so now the Japanese are going to raise their annual defense, spending from 1.7 or 1.8% to 2.1 or 2.2. That is not...
sir, why is Trump sparing Japan from tariffs now? Leverage before his Xi summit, or a sign of deeper recalibration in the United States' Asia policy?
I think Trump is just deepening an existing bond with Japan. So that bond with Japan is very strong. He's just deepening it and making it stronger, but there's nothing new under the sun. So it's not a big revolution.
Is he making it stronger to hit China?
Yes, of course. To contain and encircle China. And of course, when he goes, and it's politics is theater, right? So Trump has been in Asia for 4 days, and he will meet the Chinese leadership at the very end of 6 days, 6 full days spent in Asia from Doha to Beijing, right? So a long Pan-Asian week, right? And when he meets the Chinese in 2 days, he wants to tell them symbolically, look, I have met with most of the Asian leaders, Malaysian, Indonesian.
Malaysia, yes, sir. I was just going to
Japanese,
mention that he went to Malaysia as well.
Yeah, and they all, quote unquote, they all like me, they all embrace me. So it means that in your part of the world, Asia, we Americans are back, We let you grow a lot in the past 20, 30 years. You have grown partly because my predecessors, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Obama, they made the mistake to abandon the Asia-Pacific area and let you grow. But now it's over. America's back in APAC. And we want the Asian century, the 21st century being the Asian century, we want it to be a U.S. Asian century. So that is the message that Trump will convey. And of course, that message will clash with the Chinese message. But at the same time, the Chinese are very smart, and they know part of what Trump says
of
and
course,
does.
sir. I get your point, and I'll leave it there till, of course, the deals happen and everything takes place, and Donald Trump goes back to the United States, and we see and we come back and discuss again the outcome of this trip and what he gained and what he lost. That was Mr. Meher Nicolas Verzilli, Director of EU ASEAN Center. Thank you very much for your special insights, your informative knowledge, and your time as usual, sir. From Tokyo's Alliance Calculus to Seoul's High Stakes Summit, the world now pivots to one question. Can Trump and Xi turn a fragile trade framework into lasting peace, or is this just a pause before the next economic storm? Politico has highlighted that in a clear diplomatic maneuver ahead of his high-stakes meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, President Trump is securing strategic economic pacts across Southeast Asia. Deals were finalized with Cambodia and Malaysia, containing explicit language to strengthen supply chains and mitigate risks posed by third countries. This move strategically butters the U.S. position before the South Korea summit, where a fragile trade framework with China has been reached. Treasury officials tout an agreement that should avert now 100% tariffs and secure Beijing's cooperation on rare earth exports and fentanyl per-secure chemicals. The president team also announced progress in trade talks with Brazil before meeting with President Lula da Silva, aiming to resolve disputes over U.S. tariffs. The overall strategy is to solidify U.S. economic influence with key global partners before confronting the main rival, China. According to Al-Sharq Al-Awsat, China is currently extending an olive branch to Washington, with Foreign Minister Wang Yi urging the United States to meet it halfway to stabilize the relationship. This diplomatic call with Secretary Rubio emphasizes that the personal bond between Presidents Xi and Trump is a critical asset. The goal is to set a positive stage for the expected high-level meeting in South Korea later this week. Both sides need to capitalize on the framework agreement their negotiators recently reached on critical trade files, including soybeans and technology. Beijing is signaling a commitment to dialogue, but also a call for the United States to stop its unilateral pressure tactics. Moving forward, the only sustainable path for the world's two economic giants is to resolve conflicts through mutual respect and negotiation. And to shed more light, joining us from Washington, Ambassador Patrick Thieris, former American diplomat. A very warm welcome to In Focus, sir. And it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Ambassador Patrick. Does the new trade framework between the United States and China merely kick the tariff tightrope down the road, or can it truly compel China into structural market reforms that satisfy the America First mandate?
I thank you very much for having me. I I believe that we're still having a problem in the United States correctly assessing Chinese policy. Uh, we have a tendency to overemphasize the military threat to Taiwan in what we're doing, and perhaps we haven't really figured out what the Chinese can and cannot do economically. We should have known, for example, that the Chinese could simply stop the export of rare earths, which gave them leverage over us. Now, we are two countries, the two richest, the two most powerful countries in the world, and we actually are so tightly bound by the trade between us that we can't kill the other one. We can't really uh, do serious damage to the other country's economy without hurting our own. This is complicated, I think, by the fact that American foreign policy is no longer being run by a team of experts, of experienced diplomats and experienced finance people, but it is being run by the president personally. He may take advice from time to time, but it doesn't appear that that happens very often. And he is also, I think, frequently distracted by the fact that he is running the other major issues in American foreign policy, be it Venezuela, be it Gaza and Israel. Uh, he's running each of these himself again without serious input. So it's a little difficult, in my mind at least, to understand what the end game is for President Trump.
Sir, with global companies in semiconductors and electric vehicles already adjusting to the likelihood of parallel refining and supply systems, is this agreement a genuine effort to re-engage, or is it merely a strategic pause that masks an accelerating deep decoupling process in critical technology sectors?
I think it's a genuine effort on the part of President Trump to re-engage.
Why,
He
sir?
is a transactional president, uh, and it makes no sense for him to be trying to disengage the two economies. He merely wants to somehow coerce China into a trade relationship that is more favorable to the United States than what we have at the moment.
China's foreign investment law technically forbids forced technology transfer, and past deals included intellectual property commitments, sir. Has the United States truly secured verifiable binding mechanisms to hold the systematic theft of American trade secrets, or is this framework still reliant on China's political will to enforce its own laws on the ground, sir?
I am very happy that we finally passed such legislation. In the past, it isn't that the Chinese stole technical secrets from American companies. They made turning over this technology as part of every contract. So this is a significant step forward in slowing down the transfer of sensitive technology from the United States to China. Uh, it would have been more effective if we had had such laws in place 20 years ago. The issue now is that China itself is developing a lot of technology. It will still try to obtain it, and a lot will depend not so much on the Chinese enforcing the law as our tracking down the American companies that are willing to get short-term gain by giving up their secrets. I think this is going to become a matter
support from the EU and Japan on issues like forced technology transfer. Does this bilateral framework strengthen the United States' hand in forging a united front with allies to demand multilateral structural reforms, or does it risk alienating them by securing concessions that primarily benefit only the U.S. economy?
I think we will be able to answer that question further down the road, depending on how the agreement plays out. We still do not have much in the way of details. I fear that the president's instincts are to go for a bilateral agreement that looks after the interests of the United States without taking into consideration the interests of our allies. He tends to do this. Every one of his initiatives diplomatically are one person, to the leader of the other country, and rather than acting as the head of a coalition doing the negotiations.
Okay, so China has demonstrated its willingness to use its near monopoly on rare earth processing as a potent geopolitical lever, targeting defense and advanced computing supply chains. How can the United States and its allies consider any trade deal successful if the foundational resource for critical technology remains an economic statecraft weapon for Beijing?
We should keep in mind that we and the Europeans and other countries, other major economies such as Japan, are all looking for ways to substitute for China, just as we have been doing a reasonably good job of substituting for gas and oil to Europe to replace the Russian gas and oil. China knows that it can maintain this near monopoly for a number of years, but it's going to end. And the more the Chinese clamp down on their own resource, on their own exports, the more they give an incentive to outside powers to begin to develop.
So, sir, do you mean to say that the more crackdown that takes place in their own issues, it makes them stronger?
It will make them stronger in the long run. It makes
China strong.
No, I think China is going to play a very careful game with the export of the rare earths. What the Chinese will want to do is give countries an incentive not to spend the billions of dollars that are needed to, how could I say, to compete by building their own indigenous industry in rare earths. Remember, it isn't so much the rare earths coming out of the ground that China controls. The important part is that China controls 90% of the industrial process to make the rare earth, to refine the rare earths into usable materials. And other countries can do it too if they spend a great deal more money. So I believe that the Chinese will try to calibrate this, releasing a bit, enough to slow down the development of a rare earth industry in its key competing countries.
So what doesn't hit you makes you stronger.
Yes.
That was Ambassador Patrick Theoris, former American diplomat. Thank you very much for your valuable insights, informative knowledge, and of course for your time and your special analysis. It wouldn't be the same without you, sir. From Tokyo's tightrope to Seoul's summit brink, diplomacy dances on a blade's edge where alliances are tested, deals hang by a thread, and the world holds its breath. You've been watching In Focus. Stay tuned for more analysis and perspective on the stories shaping our world on Qnews. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye.